It is Friday, January 14th, 2022. I had taped the morning False King show. So in the rabbit ear section of the FCC regulated TV, I'm still staying analog even though they keep telling me it's digital, just so I have the correct nail in order to put in other people's coffin at the moment. But in case I get something on my own end wrong. So now, because I'm not the one doing the teleporting, I'm just doing the documentation for myself in some logical system. I can't help if there's a breach of security at the moment. I wouldn't know how to keep myself safe in this type of human environment. So now, on this television, there is one gentleman, Tony DeCoppola, and to tell and keep him in the conversation, there's a man by the name of Bob Saget. I don't know much. I don't know his personal life. I don't know his history in the movie or film industry. Like, I know he was on one TV show called Full House. I used to babysit for a couple called the Stillmans. They had two young kids. They were referred to me as a teenager. And at that time, they had something called a TGIF, which the humans in urban diction said, "Thank God it's Friday." So it was TGIF Fridays, and Bob Saget's TV show Full House would come on, and it was a very, it was a sitcom, so it was a communication where you sit as a couch potato. They would do whatever they did in parental whatever, and would leave me with the two children, and we would watch. There was like a segment or an interval of TGIF programs. And so the children and the parents would leave us money for Domino's pizza. And I think they were Australian. And then I would watch this Full House program because, again, in the late 80s, early 90s, I didn't really watch TV very much. I was also doing a lot of babysitting of neighborhood children, and it depended on the parental units that hired me. It would be whatever their house or family, however they wanted their children raised. I went with whatever their house rules were. I had other clients who said no TV at all, which was fine. I was used to that at home. But I was allowed to watch TGI Friday because it was more of like a wholesome type, or it was supposed to be anyway, type setup for the receiver from the teleportation machine. So it's the only way that I knew or heard of Bob Saget. I don't even know the characters really in the show. I don't remember any of the episodes whatsoever. It's like that was 3 decades ago. And I'm in like wiffle ball. Like I've been carrying a wiffle ball the entire time, it feels like, for I don't know what reason. So, but now I can clearly see its wiffle ball ability to try to remember details from this, whatever it was, the message that they were trying to portray in that small fraction of a life frame. But he had a family health crisis with his sister, apparently. She had something, the teleportation device is making light of this. I did not do any research. I don't know I'm not one of those hunt you down, stalk you, and then whatever. So he had something in his family that was diagnosed as scleroderma. Linda, just before, said that she had never heard of it. I said, well, here's the thing, Lynn. It's one of those made-up diseases. She goes, it's a real thing, Nicole. It's not made up. I go, here's the thing, Lynn. In humanness, there are the biological surveyors, which you refer to as medical doctors that work in the field and in the clinical setting. When they have a patient and they have complaints, they pretty much take the complaints, they go into their big old physician reference guide, and they look for which one of these diseases checks off the most boxes, and then boom, there's where your acknowledgement is on you have something wrong with you, and that's it. So that's how the big catalog of human disease works. And so, but there should be a balancing act with how are we correcting the planet and the environment the humans live within that are causing the physicians to need such an extensive reference guide that it no longer, I mean, they say it fits in your pocket, but I think that's an abridged version. At least in nursing, that's what they required us to buy. So that's that. Let's see. So, oh, and I went to nursing school. I never went and completed a nursing license. So I do not have a drug company relationship like any of the societal. I never made it into the nursing club, let's say, in a manner where I had access to other nurses or a union or anything like that. I was not unionized or unified in any of those industries. Anyhow, so Bob Saget just passed away in his hotel room, they said, and he's got they're doing a flashback to December 6th, where he is telling the story about his family. And they're telling the story about his sister. And I do not have scleroderma. Nobody has ever diagnosed me with it. I don't think it's inappropriate. I mean, I have some of the symptoms of it, but mine's more electrolyte chemistry is off. I've got astrological vortex that's off, that's causing a depression in my barometric pressure, which is causing my humanness to have cellular expansion. Now, the interesting thing is in the industry of medical, American medical, they refer to tissue samples. One tissue sample they refer to is adipose, ADIPOSE tissue. They also call it, has something to do, I think they call it brown fat, BROWNFAT. Now, I don't know if those are the biological terrorists at programming disease in some whatever format that now that everybody's all educated in doctorships and fellowships and organized somehow in the world, when they almost curse a woman with their bad juju, let's call it, or bad mojo, or bad wishes that you have for someone. I don't really have that. I'm not wired that way. I'm a different species, but I've heard of these things. Sometimes they speak of voodoo in those sense that like you put a curse on something and then whatever. So there's some form of relation within that human construct. I'm not quite sure how it's wired or how logically it sequences, but I know there's truth somewhere within it. But My grandmother had MLS, ALS, Lou Gehrig's. Those were, and then my grandfather was a different. He was a Parkinson's at the weirdest times. He said he told his head to tell his legs to stop moving, but the legs wouldn't stop moving, so he literally threw himself in the bushes, and I think that's how he broke his neck. Which then the nursing staff at the hospital fed him laying down, and then he got pneumonia, and so he passed away that way at 84. But anyway, so this is Bob Saget's story. But Bob Saget is part of this, I guess, Tisch network, because he's an actor, comedian, he's got a big following, he's had a big social career in this New York area, it looks like, and elsewhere, I suppose, where they raise money for these specific foundations and diseases to try to help find a cure. Now, I don't know, based on this false king thing I got going on the schedule and the calendar, that I don't know how to get off, and I don't know how I got on there, in the interior design and interior consultants of, but then, of course, I also have a seated family member who has a problem of a different kind, which I'm concerned for his health, safety, and welfare, because he is family first, and that would, and I know if he, because I've heard he's a doctor and his wife is a doctor. I don't know, because I don't really know doctors at the PhD level, if he becomes, or when he becomes president, and now he is president, do you leave off the doctor? Do you put that in there? Does it come before the president? Does it come after the president? I don't know what the social nuance and approved English format is, because again, I don't even know where to pose that type of a question to be respectful and maintain familial priority, but not be too informal. So is it it's president, then do you put doctor after? President Joe Biden, doctor? President Joe Biden, PhD? It's a very interesting dilemma, because it doesn't linguistically sound, it sounds like too much. But again, I would have to ask Dr. and Dr. Biden, if I was ever to meet them, what their preference would be. But anyway, let's get back to Bob Saget, because they made a memorial piece for him, and this just goes back to how do they diagnose these made up, or they're not even made, how do they make up the word in order to pay homage to and acknowledge the systematic breakdown of certain weird in-house diseases that are being experienced while the planet around us is suffering from other physiological events that are plaguing and really interacting painfully so with parts of the population. As usual, they stick with just
Saget
the body
became
disease.
a champion of fundraising and research for that disease. It's called SCLARADERMA. And just weeks before he died, Saget spent a day with our Dr. John LaPook in Los Angeles for one of his final conversations about the disease, and also how he personally used humor to cope with his loss. And John joins us this morning. You said this is one of the hardest pieces you ever...
Now, this is an interesting piece as well, because if I speak German, which I don't, but if I did, it's eins, zwei, drei. I say it's eins, zwei, drei for drei humor. But again, that's because the humor is another word in higher physiological lettering and study, or more Victorian, shall we say, in a different circus, symbolic, bibliotech, cataloged version of human. They use the word humor instead of blood. In this American 20th century, they use the word blood. They don't use humors. But I know somewhere in important things I know I have a somebody special. I just don't know where in the wild, big range and circus of things I could call out for help. But Bob Saget is sitting here in his humors, meaning his blood and his epidermis, and he's using his light, his voice, his gift, not necessarily to make fun of the situation, but it has been done before, using satire to make light of something that, because otherwise you would walk around crying and being so upset all the time. So in order to pass the time, they make mention of it in almost what the humans call funny, even though it's not funny. It's actually quite saddening and maddening when you really take an intense look at it and dissection of the population and how they cope. But there is a very clear distinction between blood work and using the blood that you were given in order to light up the world with some form of humor, some form of theatrics, some form of communication, since the body is kind of like a conduit. And so you use it in the manner for which your life path takes you or connects with. Some of us stay very silent because we don't want to contribute bad or worse, or we don't have a formula regulated audience to receive the good from our produce.
Ever wrote?
I was writing it through tears. I really was. And when I sat down with my close friend Bob Saget last month, I never imagined it would be the last time we would be together. A serious topic was on the agenda, but as you'll see, Bob never missed an opportunity to lighten things up. Well, let's start it off. You and I know each other, we're buddies.
Yeah.
When did you realize you were funny?
I thought it was funny when people were laughing at me. I was like 4 years old.
When we sat down in Los Angeles last month, Bob sat...
This is another thing that does not hit home with everybody. There are some people in the world who do not think that it is okay for someone to laugh at them. They have to maintain their dignity and the respectfulness between them and the population at all costs. So that's one set of it exists. And then there are others who are in a very different situation, almost like a jester situation, which are trying to serve the one who does not want to be made fun of as best they can in whatever gifts they've had bestowed upon them. So that is the second set of circumstances. So it is not an absolute that you can't just say that everybody doesn't want someone to laugh at them. Because in certain populace, they make a living off of it and they enjoy that attention. But it is not so for everyone. In some society, in some places, it is actually a sign of deep disrespect. But being the way that in some other populace, it is actually thought of as a privilege to get to that level of society, that somebody actually takes the time to hear you out and maybe connect with you in some human format. And those distinctions are so important and evident in certain areas of safety and procedure.
Bob Saget showed me how being funny helps him roll with the punches.
And we are getting a lot of airplanes.
It's okay.
And this guy's having a new muffler put in.
But we didn't meet just to have a few laughs. Bob wanted to share a personal story of loss that had affected him for almost 30 years.
I had a sister who passed away from scleroderma. It was a 3 to 4 year process, and she was gone. And I couldn't bear it.
His older sister, Gay, seen here with her son Adam, was only 47 years old when she died in 1994 from scleroderma.
I can't get the images of the end of her life out of my head ever.
What were some of her symptoms?
She had a lot of fatigue. Her body, she said it felt like her skin was on fire. She went to regular medical doctors that said that it could be lupus, it could be mental illness, it could be Epstein-Barr.
So it was sort of the litany
They
of...
named everything except what it was.
Now, in certain sectors of the population, the obscurity of not knowing what exactly something is has commonly been referred to as par for the course, in their not able to correctly identify things. There are other populations that live at the same time that the thought, as a doctor, of not being able to properly diagnose your perhaps one, perhaps very minimal amount of patients, is in essence like a death sentence, like for the doctor. They have to be on the whatever precipice of anything new coming to light. It's just how their area is run. But at the same time, both of the hearts beat somewhere within the system. But it's difficult to speak on just one set of circumstances in one language when there are so many different layers, and their rhythm is going off at the same time. Again, quantifiably, it makes it, in certain areas of science, the preciseness is your whatever importance and your ability, but in other areas of science, it's not always coming to an exact, divisible, verifiable, and assertable point. Not every area of science under the umbrella of the word science. That's where some of the rationale works, and sometimes the irrationale works. But again, that's within a range to be discerned by normally professionals, when parts of the system are working properly and not against the populace.
Scleroderma literally means hard skin. It's an autoimmune disease where excess collagen causes tissue to lose its elasticity.
Now, autoimmune, that brings me back questionably to healthcare. Now, are those the jester children that are so horribly misinformed that they're almost a danger to themselves? So they have some kind of blanket immunity to certain whatever. But as the evil children from everywhere that are benefiting more than they should and refusing to help the areas that need, or to lead properly in a orderly fashion, is that where it's coming from on autoimmune? And then some dis-ease. It's an ease or distension in ranks and file and ability. One of the things is the tissue loses elasticity, it says. It also says hard skin. This is something that has been present since I've been back. I've never had it before. But now it's present in the calcaneus area of the heel of the foot, in just from walking. I've walked in boots. Actually, they're Victorian boots, I believe. They go up half calf with no heel whatsoever, over jeans, dark brown on the bottom, saddle on the top. I've seen them referenced in Pride and Prejudice and a few other movies. They were my favorite boots. I got those, whatever. I even resold them, SOLE on the bottom, but it got a hole in the bottom of the sole, exactly where I say the electricity is coming up through the sidewalk. They also have in the local area the sidewalk labeled electricity at the graffiti on the ground kind of a thing from an official. And I don't know what takes care of that in a big city. But it causes hard skin, and it causes the electrolytes to interact differently and form different cohesions. But it's based on environment and what the exposure and what the habitat. I mean, like, I also have high gravity here where everything falls or starts to scrunch forward. It causes lines, and not everybody has that type of gravity, or not everybody's suffering from this level of gravity. But then that goes back to CERN and concern, and where in the machine the blue marble is spinning for multiple, but at the same, but with differential.
Elasticity. Symptoms include tightening of the skin, finger and toe pain, arthritis, muscle weakness, and trouble swallowing. It can also damage internal organs, especially the lungs.
It can be a very terrible multi-system disease, but not in every patient.
Dr. Fred Wigley is a professor of medicine at Johns Hopkins University who has studied scleroderma for 45 years.
You see those dilated capillaries?
Dr. Wigley is trained to detect the telltale signs of scleroderma.
The drugs that we have now clearly work better when we see those patients at the very early onset, at time when things are just getting started.
In the United States,
That's my problem. Everything that plagues them, the humans, comes attached with some false claim of a drug, which may or may not help. And it may or may not. I mean, it's like just gambling, but it's their profession. So then somebody stands up to try to defend it. And it keeps in this self-deprecating way. There's no motivation to actually fix what needs to be fixed in a healthy environmental way. So the body breaks down and feels the shock or the electricity or the arcing or the whatever's being neglected by an even larger fight over some of these lower level plaguing health issues.
an estimated 300,000 people have scleroderma. 80% are women, most commonly ages 30 to 50. For unclear reasons, the disease is often more severe in people who are Native American or Black.
I could hardly lift my...
Okay, so this seems to me like this was some campaign disease where now all of a sudden someone's calling out, well, what is a Native American? Well, let me plague a section of the population with it. Then why would you put something completely different? So now is this like a campaign, like we're both suffering from it, like we can come together and find a cure? Because that seems to be running alternate to the narrative that somebody else is using in war. Like now it becomes biological war, germ warfare. Now it becomes political warfare. Now it becomes actual warfare. And now people are actually suffering from it. And everybody is scaring them with false narrative. So now how is humanity allowed to justify or conduct themselves this way? These are the things I'm just unclear of. And I don't know where to insert myself to assist. But I know there's a lot of big people in the world, much more important than myself, and I don't want to endanger them, but I also don't know how to be useful and use my humor, my instrument, my humor being my blood work and like my instrument in a fashion for which I was designed in order to, because my astrological zodiac, like cosmological life path was taken offline. So I don't know how to use my gift, my talent, my symbols, my large symbols in order to effectively communicate, protect, and move into the correct position. For me, it's never been clear. It's because I was pulled off and I'm using a wiffle ball, literally a ball with holes in it that I could put my fingers through just to have a grip on the reality for which is being tossed at me. This is the pitch. And then this is where the pitch goes into action in the field. And then there's me who's been observing some of it and not quite sure how it all stacks up and why I was left in the field in this horrific engagement of some sorts that I did not agree to. Star 1978, Star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza. It is Earth, Solar System, Milky Way, Universe, Galaxy is broken, and it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.